I'm Madeline Robbins. I'm a litigation attorney at Ramos Law, and today we are going to be watching a Judge Judy video and kind of talking through what happens. Side note, I actually had a friend that went through the Judge Judy process. You know, you submit a claim in small claims court in your state, and I don't know if Judge Judy just has, these producers that are watching the dockets for small claims courts, but the producers will reach out to the parties involved in those small claims. And, they reach out and they say, if you drop this claim and all of the parties agree to participate, we will fly you out here, we'll film our show, and Judge Judy will basically act as a sort of arbitrator, a sort of judge, for all intents and purposes without, the legal backing of a real judge. So, my question always was, well, how does Judge Judy get some of these people to agree to come on these shows? Sometimes they're talking about very embarrassing things. It's not fun stories that they're coming on Judge Judy to talk about. And what Judge Judy does is, her show will come in and pay for the verdict. So, in my friend's case, his dog was injured by a neighborhood cat who originally, the owner came out and said, I'm so sorry. My cat is known, for causing some ruckus and will pay for all of your dog's vet bills. So, when the time came after the eye surgery happened and it was time for her to pay the vet bills due to her cat's attack on my friend's dog, she all of a sudden said, no, that wasn't my cat. I don't want anything to do with this and I'm not gonna pay for any of the bills. So they go and file this claim in small claims court. Judge Judy reaches out, both parties agree to do it, and they get flown out there. So they go out there, they go through their show. Judge Judy decides who is responsible and what amount. And then afterwards, the parties get to part and go home, and the show itself pays for whatever amount of monetary damages. So that's kind of how they get the people to come on these shows. So we're gonna dive right into this clip here.
Phyllis Charday is suing her former friend, Shannon Hemmert, for selling a car that she paid for.
Ms. Charday, this is your case, and then I'm going to tell you what your problem is.
Okay.
You are not permitted by law, you personally are not permitted by law to own a car in your name.
Right.
So I'm gonna stop right here because I can already see that Judge Judy it looks like she's kind of made up her mind about the amount of, or the merit of the claims that are being brought. Judge Judy comes out and says, I'm gonna explain to you what your claims are. So that to me, says that she's already prepared for this. She already kind of knows the facts of this case. And she's going to explain legally why or why not this claim has merit and what claims may or may not have merit or could move forward in the legal system, even though this is, just on TV.
And that's because, why?
I got pulled over without insurance.
That's not the reason. That's not the reason.
Okay.
That's baloney. It's a lot more than that. Because if you get pulled over without insurance and you don't have insurance, what they do in every state is they say, show me proof of insurance when you come and pay the ticket for not having proof of insurance. If you show them proof of insurance, they either make you pay a fine or not. But you don't lose the right to own a car. Now, you want to start that again with me? You can't own a car in your name because...
And I'll pause again. Like I said, Judge Judy has done her homework. She doesn't get on here and just trust that these people will be forthcoming with her. As you can see, she is trying to tell this individual, and it seems like you shouldn't have had a car at all. The individual says, yeah, I know, it's because I, didn't have insurance. And Judge Judy says, here's the real reason why you are not supposed to even have or own a car.
The only thing I know is that I didn't have insurance when I got my ticket.
When you got how many tickets?
This was the first one with no insurance. I have priors from 2002.
So you have more than one offense.
Yes.
Just as a side note, I love the faces that Judge Judy makes. It could not be further from how actual judges and actual courtrooms are operated. You're really never gonna know what a judge is thinking by the expressions on their face, but for purposes of television, I kind of love it.
You're not allowed to have a car. So you bought a car anyway, and your friend agreed to put the car in her name and still let you drive.
Yes.
And you drove the car. Which, I'm telling you, not a smart thing to do. because now you're liable for anything that happens with that car. You do understand that.
Yes, ma'am.
So I think Judge Judy is kind of trying to give a reality check in this case. And I sort of sense that from the beginning when they introduced the parties to this as being former friends. You know, it's really, really tough when, you know, you get in fights with people that you're close with. It's even tougher when you sue them. So I really do think that Judge Judy is kind of coming in here to set the tone and the temperature to let her know, hey, I know you're angry, but you know, your anger's way out of proportion, or you really need to think about this in context, which is really smart to do, especially in situations where she can, like this in a courtroom. You know, judges in regular trials aren't there to mediate. They're not there to talk about the merits of what they believe is to, you know, the strongest or the weakest aspects of the case. So for Judge Judy to come in and kind of give a reality check from the very beginning of this, I think could be really helpful in sort of resolving this and sort of, you know, ensuring that the expectations are met at the very beginning before she gives her ruling.
Because even if you have insurance on the car, if they find out she's driving the car and has an accident, they're going to disclaim because she's not permitted to drive a car. You got it?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, so that's not pretty smart of you. In any event, you're not allowed to own a car. You're not allowed to drive a car. So you bought a car anyway, and you drove it. And then you parked it at some point. There's a fly that is not going to be living much longer. I like this one, actually. I like this one better.
I love that she keeps a fly swatter at her desk.
So then when the car was parked at your house or something, your grandson took the car, allegedly without your permission, got pulled over, and the car was impounded.
Yes.
And since the car was in her name, she was able to get the car out of impound. She had to pay money. How much did you have to pay to get it out?
So it looks to me that, you know, Judge Judy is coming in here and trying to show, you know, this individual exactly, you know, how much her friend stuck her neck out for her. Her friend obviously knows that she can't have a car in her name, so she puts it in her own name. You know, the car gets impounded. She goes in and she is paying her own money to get out what is supposed to be her friend's car. So again, this is Judge Judy really setting the tone and the expectation for how, what I believe she already knows how she's going to rule in this case. And to me, it does seem that she is favoring the woman in the pink shirt over the woman in the red shirt, especially given, you know, all of her phrasing at the very beginning of, you know, you weren't supposed to do X, you weren't supposed to do Y, so you turn around and do X and Y. You know, Judge Judy is very straightforward when it comes to her thoughts and feelings, which I appreciate.
161.25.
And then she took the car and sold it.
Yes.
And you want me to help you?
I'd appreciate it.
So she's basically coming in here, laying all of this out and saying, and now you want my help? For what? Which is, you know, probably the reality check that this individual was not expecting.
That's not happening.
So I'm just out the money?
You are.
Okay.
Courts aren't going to help you. If you start out by breaking the law, because there's a valid reason, which you're not telling me, which I'm not pursuing, because it's really not important. But if your infractions were such that you not only weren't allowed to own a car, but you weren't allowed to drive a car because you had no license,
Right.
and you did anyway, and what you're asking a court to do is to say, well, despite the fact that you were breaking the law, I'm going to help you. Courts don't do that. Not this court.
So this kind of comes down to a legal phrase that, you know, every attorney in their 1L contracts class hears, and it's really the doctrine of unclean hands. And what this doctrine is that the courts come in and they look to see, you know, you're coming in here and you're making this claim, and you're essentially asking, you know, what Judge Judy is saying, you're asking me to help you, but look at your own hands. You weren't even legally allowed to have this car. You know, your friend stuck her neck out for you to ensure that you could still operate one and have one. She goes in and pays her own money to get the car out of the impound lot, and you're coming in here dragging her through small claims court and now on this TV show to still point the finger at her and say, well, she's the bad guy. So really what, you know, Judge Judy is doing here is using a version of that legal doctrine of unclean hands to kind of look at the claimant here and say, you know, you're throwing stones at a glass house when you yourself are in it too. And you know, the court's not gonna help you. You do not have a legal recourse here because you weren't even supposed to be having the vehicle at all. And now you're still trying to sit here and point the finger at somebody else that they're the bad person. So really what Judge Judy is sitting here is saying is, you know, look at your own hands before you start trying to put the blame on your friend. Another thing that I wanted to point out too, and Judge Judy really didn't get into it because it really is not relevant here. I would imagine that, you know, if it doesn't have to do with insurance, like the claimant was originally saying, the reason why somebody gets their license taken or revoked and you're not able to drive anymore is because you were a repeat or a habitual offender, meaning that, you know, you're operating your vehicle carelessly, recklessly, to the point where it is a danger for you to have the privilege of this license. So it would not surprise me if Judge Judy knew that the reason why this woman did not have driving privileges was something to do with possibly DUIs or DWAI. And the reason why that's not relevant here is because she's really just talking about the monetary damages that happened afterwards when I believe that the car was sold. So it's not necessarily, that's really, you know, a sideshow to the circus, but I do think that that's sort of playing into Judge Judy's reasonings here, especially with the unclean hands doctrine.
This court doesn't do that. Now, was it nice of her to sell the car to somebody else? Not really a good friend, but what would have happened if your grandson, instead of getting pulled over, hurt somebody in the car? They would have taken away everything she owned, right?
Right.
So you got what you deserved. We're done.
Parties are excused. You may step out.
So while Judge Judy is not necessarily the most careful with her words, she does not tiptoe around them. I think that she gets it right most of the time. She had a very long legal career, so she knows what she is doing. And when she steps into these roles, I think it's actually very fascinating because she gets to kind of step into the role of a judge who normally has to sit there and just make sure that all the rules are being followed of evidence, kind of keep quiet as you know, the proceedings are going on. She gets to have this fun role of, you know, you're presenting evidence and I get to talk back to you at the present time to tell you why this doesn't fly, to tell you why this doesn't work. So in this case, because Judge Judy, you know, sided with the respondent in this case, so that would be, you know, the defendant, the individual that sold the vehicle, because Judge Judy sided with her, there are no fees that will be awarded. Basically, the claims that were brought by the individual were not well-founded, and Judge Judy basically says you get nothing. So in this case, I do anticipate that, you know, both parties walk away from this. You know, obviously they get their flights to California and stuff, and you know, their friendship probably is not going to be repaired afterwards. But I could see, you know, that other individual coming in and requesting payment for the $200 or some odd dollars that she paid to get that vehicle out. You know, something along those lines if there was another claim. But here I think Judge Judy absolutely got that right with unclean hands and the fact that she shouldn't have even been in that position legally, period, because she couldn't operate a vehicle. You know, Judge Judy got it right, and you get to kind of see the insight of what some judges, I'm sure, wish that they could say from behind the bench.